warm welcome to Political Capital, the intersection of money and politics. I'm Karabo Letlhatlha. He is one of the last two remaining Rivonia trial defendants and by far the most decorated of African National Congress members. Last night, Mr. Integrity himself, Andrew Mlangeni, turned 93 years young. And he tells us the secret to his longevity. You want to stay put for that. Later in the show, from the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa to now interim chairman of state-owned all-encompassing transport body, Transnet. Why is Popo Molefe the go-to man to clean up SOEs? And later we will be going to Zimbabwe to speak to one of the youngest candidates for parliamentary elections on the continent. Why does lawyer and independent parliamentary candidate Fadzayi Mahere thinks that she can take on the ubiquitous ZANU-PF machinery? We'll pose these questions and more to her, but first up, CNBC Africa's Chris Bishop has his eye on the papers.
Starting off with a bit of good news this week, the price of platinum is expected to go up according to the Business Day. It's going to rise slowly this year after touching a 12-year low in 2017. About time too, as half the country's platinum mines are unprofitable. We think this will be fueled by both a contraction in supply, chiefly from South African mines, as well as rising demand. That's according to a survey by GFM Platinum Group Metals. In the Star, calls for public protector to be axed. Advocate Busisiwe Mkhubane is on the ropes and could be the first public protector in more than 23 years to face a parliamentary inquiry to probe her conduct. This follows a raft of complaints against her over the past few months. And a big strike set for next week. Public Service plans a day of rage on Monday. The PSA has vowed to bring public services in the country to a halt on Monday, and it says if the Minister, Ayanda Dlodlo, wants to take us to court if she believes the strike is illegal. We are public servants, not public slaves, says the PSA. And moving to Zimbabwe and the elections coming up on July the 30th, ED vows to reopen closed companies. That's in the Herald in Harare. President Mnangagwa has said reopening closed companies and ensuring they contribute significantly to the economy is his government's top priority. He set a target to turn Zimbabwe into a middle-income economy by 2030. He has a big job on his hands. And speaking about Zimbabwe, we've got more on this story live from Harare.
At 32 years old, she is one of the youngest candidates for parliamentary elections on the continent. Fadzayi Mahere is a Zimbabwean advocate of the High Court and the Supreme Court, and she will be standing in the July 30th election. But the question is, what makes her think she can take on the ubiquitous machinery of the ruling ZANU-PF? She joins me now from Harare. Fadzayi, I'll start with exactly that. What makes you think you can take on this mammoth machine that is called ZANU-PF?
Thank you very much for having me, Karabo. I think it's the simple issue that people, residents and constituents of Mount Pleasant constituency are sick and tired. They're frustrated with the lack of delivery, both in Parliament and the formal lawmaking process in the House and on the ground in terms of community development. There's been too much of a distance between the politics of ZANU-PF and the people. And most people are frustrated with this. And, our campaign hopes to bridge that gap. We seek to introduce a new style of politics in this country, which is not about positions, which is not about, jostling and, all those other things. But we hope to offer, an alternative where people's daily struggles are made mainstream.
Now, Fadzayi, there's over 130 political parties in Zimbabwe, most of which mushroomed following the toppling of former President Robert Mugabe. What is going to give you a distinction when you look at the landscape, if you will?
Well, that's a great question. I think as is pointed out in our manifesto, the three key pillars are hope, accountability, and development. We've been on the ground connecting with constituents and selling our vision and carrying out various pre-election programs and promises. And we've been doing this for 1 year. So I think we've been able to make a commitment and a connection to the electorate and sell ourselves as a credible alternative to the incumbent who is in there now, and to really give people some hope and some inspiration, given the quality of politics that we've experienced over the last 20 or so years. Even if you look at the last 5 years, I mean, the quality of representation in Parliament by the MP of Mount Pleasant has been less than impressive. And I think it's that gap, the lack of technical competence to reform the law in various key areas, from economic issues, developmental issues, constitutional issues. We just don't hear the voice of our constituents in that process. Additionally, he's failed to conduct public hearings, to reach out to the electorate and make their issues mainstream, and to really find solutions to the daily struggles that Zimbabweans face.
Fadzayi, now running a credible elections in Zimbabwe is something that is still to be tested, and the current president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, promised nothing but a free and fair election. Is that the mood that you're getting while you're in Harare, that indeed Zimbabwe, come the 30th of July, will conduct a free and fair and credible election?
I think the opportunity definitely is there. We certainly have the legislative and constitutional framework to ensure that that takes place. So all the laws that would enable a free and fair election are in place. And this is borne testimony to by the recent Electoral Amendment Act. That said, what's often the missing ingredient in Zimbabwean politics is the political will, both by the electoral management body and the various, machinery and, parts of the state, from the security forces, the executive itself, to carry out, what the law requires them to do. Chief among these is making the voters' roll available. Just this week, the opposition demanded copies of the voters' roll from the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. The chairperson of that commission indicated that the roll would be available via a hyperlink, but that hyperlink is not available anywhere. So we're really concerned, especially as a constituency, about things like constituency stuffing, about trying to reach out exactly, which components are going to vote. And so without the voters' roll, we can't do this. Fair media coverage is another issue. We've seen some improvement on this. So, for example, today the opposition aired, the launch of the MDC manifesto, but still a lot more needs to be done to ensure that state media houses are not used as a propaganda mouthpiece for the ruling party. We also feel that ZEC has a constitutional obligation to act in a transparent manner. This is constitutionally enshrined, meaning that the entire process, from the printing of ballot papers to what takes place on polling day, even what happens thereafter as citizens try and defend the vote, has to be complied with strictly. And so that's what we're going to be keeping an eye out for. As a campaign, we've done everything we can to ensure that we safeguard, in as far as this is possible, against any electoral malpractice. We've got poll observers that we're currently training. We've got a strong legal team. We've got eyes and ears on the ground. We've written to ZEC, and we're doing everything that we can based on malpractice that's taken place over the last couple of elections, 2008 and 2013, and this election, to ensure that we achieve, and as far as this is possible, a free, fair, and credible
If I could just jump in there. Now, you have been very vocal on social media, even criticizing the briefcase of Emmerson Mnangagwa, the Louis Vuitton briefcase that you've seen there. In a country with as much, chronic cash shortages as Zimbabwe does, do you feel that the playing fields are uneven there as well, considering how much access a political party can have to its funds per day?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that's kept ZANU-PF in power is its almost unlimited access to state resources, whether it's in terms of human capital, financial measures, and so on. We've got a situation where, public officials are corrupt on a daily basis, and this is often well recorded, but nothing is done. The president himself indicated that there's a need for public officials to declare their assets. So when I made that tweet, it's very surprising, for a citizen of this country where cash is almost impossible to access, where you've got a difficulty in making international payments, where you've got this monetary crisis and overwhelming poverty. You just go out onto the streets of Harare, the poverty, the vending, the helplessness, that's, almost ubiquitous, that's everywhere. It's a bit of an affront to then see, this largesse on the part of politicians, from their homes to their cars. We had a diamond crisis where, diamonds were discovered one day. The next thing, that money didn't make its way to the business. So we definitely have a situation where there is an uneven access to money and resources, which definitely gives ZANU-PF the upper hand. But I don't think this is something that can't be overcome. At the end of the day, it may take time, but the will of the people is paramount. And I think when the voice of the people speaks loud enough, when people congregate and come together and say in no uncertain terms that constitutionally we want change, I think that will overpower, this entire system and ensure that we achieve a Zimbabwe that we can be proud of.
Fadzayi, I'd like to thank you very much for your time. And as a man who lives in Africa, I think the space is prime for disruption. I wish more women would come into the political space, and I wish you all the best come July 30th.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Popo Molefe is no stranger to confrontations. He previously clashed with both former ministers of transport during his tenure at the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, claiming they were hampering his efforts to clean up the state-owned entity. He sat down with my colleague Lubabalo Mashikana to discuss his new role as Transnet interim chairperson.
Transnet is one of the SOEs that have been under a big cloud regarding a number of irregular transactions. And it has been the subject of investigation by a whole range of institutions, one of them being the workmen's attorneys. But there are also investigations that have been initiated internally by management. Others are being undertaken by the Hawks, consequent upon the complaint that was laid with them in November 2017, relating to a number of companies which were either paid monies under different guises. So we are waiting on the Hawks to move rapidly in respect of these investigations.
Has there been any program of action yet that has been drafted to actually pave a way forward with the regaining the public's interest into the SOE?
Well, the starting point, Lubabalo, for us is to understand and analyze the content of the Worksmen's report. We have received a presentation from the Worksmen's. Those directors who have not had the opportunity to receive that presentation will receive it. We will have a further formal presentation to the board on the 13th of June, where all of us will have the opportunity to ask critical questions to the investigators. Arising out of that, of course, we will determine the steps that the board needs to take to clean up and to rebuild the organization.
What are your comments on the recent scandal of a 1 billion rand scandal by the CEO of Transnet?
Well, it would appear that what was reported in the newspapers is an old story that was there, which has been repeated. And until such a time that we have done our work and drilled deeper into the issues affecting the company, we would be very careful of referring to individuals as corrupt.
So the allegations, Ntate Molefe, including the ones of the 1,064 locomotives, are also part of the investigations that are being done at the SOE?
Well, that investigation has already taken place. It was done by the worksmen, commissioned by the previous board. We have to deal with the ways of implementing the recommendations arising out of that report.
Where to from here after the board meeting on the 13th of June?
Quite clearly, our responsibility is to discharge the mandate of the company, to make sure that Transnet, as a critical state-owned company in the economy of South Africa, restores its image and integrity, that it cleans itself up. And we're hoping that in doing so, a lot of people within the organization who have information that should be made available to the new board will do so, and that to the extent that there would be investigations by law enforcement agencies, such employees would be willing to cooperate to assist the law enforcement agencies to arrive at the truth. So that's what we would be doing, but critical for us is to make sure that the different business units of the company achieve their strategic priorities, and that is ensuring that freight rail is performing optimally, that our gas pipeline operates optimally, our national ports are performing to the expectations of our people and the shareholder, but also to make sure that there's greater integrity, greater transparency, that we improve also stakeholder relations, make sure that those who provide services to network or to Transnet or Transnet is servicing have confidence in the organization's ability to do its work honestly and diligently.
Should we expect any criminal charges to be laid against individuals who've been found to have had a hand in the misconduct at the utility?
Well, already there are criminal charges that have been laid, and as new information comes up, certainly to the extent that crimes might have been committed, we are obliged as directors in terms of the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act and the Criminal Procedure Act to make sure that we report all wrongdoings within the organization.
We're off to a short break. When we return, Andrew Mlangeni tells us the secret to long life.